Hey, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine in their light. Today, I have the pleasure of my brother from another mother and another country with me. Doug Ferrier is someone you may have seen on a previous episode, and he was kind enough to return and share with us his next phase of his journey. So, Doug, welcome back, and thank you for joining me tonight.
Hey Daryl, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just happy to be here and impact the world.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. You're part of my international group. I have Canada, England, Spain. I think those are my three international. I'm trying to get New Zealand, but she hasn't agreed yet. So thanks for being in the international mix. Last we spoke, you were sharing with us your journey that took you to heights that most people don't want to go on. It's to the edge of a building, thinking about jumping off, and what it took for you to get in that position, and how you brought yourself back. So, um, what um, what would you say has been a big pivot from the time you shared that story? Because I know it was one of the first times that you had spoken about it. I know that you've transitioned into a different role. You're still in construction, but you're transitioning from that. And now you've become a speaker in your own right. So tell me a little bit about that transition.
Uh, it's been daunting to say the least. However, once I started sharing my story and I started seeing the impact it was having, I was like, oh my God, I want to just share it and tell everybody because it makes a difference in lives. And to get those messages from people where they say that I made a difference in their life, or I had one person send me a message saying that I saved their life just listening to the recording. And it's like that is a feeling you can't describe. And for me, it all started when for the first time, I shared about that day. And it took me about 15 minutes to say about three sentences about it because it's just the emotion that it overcame me. It was, I couldn't control it. And since then, it's been mind blowing. It's just so liberating.
Yeah, I
And
see it even in your face from the first time you were on, just trying to share, even from childhood and, your feelings and thoughts on everything that led you up to that building. Um, just your face and your demeanor now is even brighter and lighter and more authoritative in your conversation. So, um, how, um, how did you first realize, other than someone reaching out and saying, "Oh, you saved my life," how, other than that direct nuance, how did you see it impacting others? How did you realize that it had an impact?
just because people were seeing the message I was sharing. So I knew it was having an impact because I've heard stories from other people and it's had an impact on my life. So that it's difficult for people to step up and to voice their opinion or their support when it's on such a sensitive subject. So knowing that people are seeing my message and hearing and listening to it, it tells me that it's getting across to them. And then like you said, you can see the difference in my face. Um, I have a sweater actually that says "Life is good," and it's just like everything is amazing, and I carry this aura all day long.
Yeah.
Um, and I just the vibe I get from other people and the way I can see their mood change, it's mind blowing how much it changes people's lives.
Do you find that it's affecting mostly men or women? Because obviously being in the construction and a fairly manly man, you were sharing a part of your journey that is kind of taboo for men to speak about, our feelings and how we're affected and that we might have depression and stuff. Society doesn't cheer us on and say, "Oh, thank you for sharing that." They tend to do that more for the feminine than they do the masculine.
Yeah.
So how do you find this playing out with your people?
I find that it is more females that are drawn to it and accept it more than
Oh,
men.
really?
Men are more standoffish. They have their guard up more. But ironically, a lot of the messages I get, the private messages, are from men.
Hmm. Yeah. So publicly, the women are standing and cheering, and privately, the men are the ones saying, "Hey, I can relate."
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you discover that you wanted to be on stage? Because now I've seen you're a public speaker. You've been on several stages. You recently got to share a stage with Trent Shelton and many others. So how did you discover that you were passionate about that part?
It started when I heard somebody else on stage and their story had such a massive impact on my life. It had a pivot on the way I looked at the passing of my father. And it really unlocked another level of personal development for me. So it was just natural as one and one equals two because she shared her journey, her steps, was courageous enough. And what I coach on now, one of the main things I coach on is peak performance habits. And one of those habits is showing courage. And developing influence is another one. So when you have the courage to share your message and develop influence on other people, it makes a difference to their lives. I think I've got to do this. I've got to get my voice out as much as possible. And I think part of it too is when I started doing Facebook Lives, I did a
Mm.
couple of like, oh my God, this is fun. But I'd be on Zoom calls like, oh my God, this is fun. And then getting onto the stage, it was like I knew it was meant to be.
So I started this platform for that very reason, to give a voice to the voiceless, to give them a place to share their mess, to make it their message, to make it a survival guide for others. And over the course of, the year and a half, going on this full second year that I've been doing this, that's what I find. And I see, people like you who've come on. It's the first time maybe ever that they've shared their story. They're a little timid and shy about it, but then something empowers them and they begin to share it more often. And then they see the impact. And when I see the transformation, people go from victim to victor, and they can share their message without it emotionally draining them to do so. Now I know they've risen above it, and they are no longer just sharing their story to tell who they are and what their journey is, but now it has the impact to affect others. And I think you've truly reached that pinnacle for yourself.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think you and I talked about it privately too. Well, I know we talked about it privately, how it was draining for me to share my story.
Mhm.
And you had mentioned, you're like, that's because your scar hasn't healed yet. Your wound hasn't healed and it needs to become a scar.
Right.
And that was part of the power that I got was having that conversation with you because these simple conversations that, a lot of times we put no weight into them because like, it's just a conversation, but the power of a conversation, you changed my life just by that conversation. It helped me realize, that's where I was at and admit it.
Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I do teach, and you and I haven't officially, been in a coaching environment, but we are part of same communities and we are in the same, field and vein. So, that's why when I call you brother, it is not just a title, it's a real belief. But one of the things that I do coach my clients on is that scab has to become a scar for you to be victor over it. Because if you keep picking at it and it keeps bleeding, it's going to keep affecting your life. But like I've had two fusion surgeries, they both went through the same hole, right? And when that was blown up in a scab, and if I picked at it and bled, it kept affecting me. But now that it's a scar, I can touch it, I can feel it, I can look at it, and it has no power over me, right? And that's
Yeah,
how our mess has to become. It has to be that scar that we hold as part of our life and part of the fabric of who we are, but it doesn't hold the power over us because it doesn't injure us anymore.
absolutely. 110%.
So you are now also going from construction owner to public speaker to also coach.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things that I really love about your journey is that you are not doing this for Doug. You're doing this for the impact and the change that you can have on others. And that's a huge difference. A lot of people are, you and I both know, there's coaches that are just coaching to get a paycheck.
Yeah.
And there's speakers who will only speak if you give them a paycheck. But the ones who have the impact, they're the ones with the service mentality and the service heart to step
Yeah.
out and say, okay, how can I help your journey? And so what has been your biggest mind shift? Because it is a mind shift from construction worker to that kind of impact. What's been your biggest mind shift in that realm?
I think one of them is actually something that I came across this week quite a bit. Um, Working with an individual that I know I see the potential, but he's not open to it yet. So in the construction industry, there's lots of people that are stubborn, lots of egos, and you can see the potential they want to grow, or they can grow, and it's almost defeating because I can see this great potential in them, but they don't want to have it come out. Whereas when I shift to the coaching, is people do want to have it come out. They're ready to be called out on their BS. Um, some people, if they're not ready, you call them out on their BS and you're challenging them. Now they're going to challenge you back. So it's meeting people where they're at as opposed to where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm smiling and I'm amused because as you know, my daughter attempted suicide as well, several months back. And I came to that same realization that you just talked about. I was trying to meet her where I expected her to be instead of meeting her where she was at. And so it became a very different dynamic between us, which has since improved because now I'm meeting her where she's at instead of where she, you know, in my brain should be.
Yeah.
I used to call myself Johnny Appleseed, just running out, throwing seeds out because I see your potential and I'm going to help water it and help it grow, And I heard a gentleman a few months ago, he said, and he was talking to a broad audience, so he wasn't talking specifically to me, although I felt he could have been. He said,
Yeah.
you want to go out and change the world, but does the world want to be changed? And do they want to be changed by you?
Yeah.
So again, we have to be very cautious on getting people to their potential if they don't even want to live in that realm themselves. So
Yeah.
it's very insightful for yourself. Um, did you see that play out in your family life as well? Did the dynamic between your kids and your wife change?
It has. It absolutely has. Um, I joke around, but it's actually serious. I used to have my fuse used to be as long as the hair on top of my head.
Yeah.
And and now it's like, as an example, my bonus daughter, she has this skincare routine that she does. She's 13 years old and she spends a lot of time doing it. Well, it used to irritate me because she's taken up the bathroom for so long, but she's practicing self-care.
Hmm.
So I've gone from, being annoyed by it to being supportive, saying, hey, this is good. Take care of yourself.
Hmm.
And it's even with my son, my grandson, where I find myself completely changing how I approach them.
Yeah. It's the reframe, and it's not a huge reframe. You're not, she's still taking up time as a 13-year-old does in the bathroom, but you reframed it from you're taking up my time to you're caring for yourself.
Yeah. And then my wife and I looked at different ways to support her in it. So now she does whatever she has to have the sink for, she does in the bathroom, and then she does the rest in her room. She has a nice little mirror and set up for doing it.
So you were able to not only adapt, but also provide this little extra.
Yeah.
It probably made her feel, you know, important. Hey, now I have this little setup on my own, and
Yeah.
I'm not in this shared space. So probably had an impact for her even beyond, the skincare routine,
Yeah. And then
right?
the bond with my wife is just through the roof now.
So
It's
expand on
phenomenal.
that. How I know from being married, our wives will love us through even our darkest moments. And they'll stand behind us and support us. So how has that shifted? What has been the pivot?
When I first met her, I was the typical guy. I was standoffish. I was a guy that had been hurt. So I was like, walls are up, you're not getting in. And it's gone like a complete 360 and beyond because now it's just looking for ways to love her more. When I was in Nashville, one of our sisters came up to me and another brother, and she said, "You know, this compliment is like beyond imagination." She said, "I just want to thank you guys and say how much I appreciate how much you respect and love your wives." And it was like just mind blowing to hear that and to see that and to know that what I'm doing is, my wife feels it, and obviously it shows how much I love her and care for her because other people see it as well. And our connection is just it's through the roof. I mean, I was just in Florida for the weekend, and neither one of us could wait for me to get home.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel that with my wife. We've been together for 10 years and it feels like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And it's one of those things where when you have your part time, you can't wait to get back to your together time.
yeah,
It's an awesome place to be in, especially for those of us who entered relationships as hurt men, and we didn't display the level of affection and love that we should have, and they stood by us anyway. And
yeah.
now, we've grown together as couples to be better for each other, not just ourselves. So, what is when you look back at your old life, um, you ever scratch your head and go, don't even recognize you?
Yeah.
Explain that a little.
Um, a great way would be I remember my car accident in 2020. The old me would have snapped and reacted to the guy that hit me. Instead, I responded in a positive and productive manner. The old me would have been looking for ways, grab this guy out of his truck and make sure he needs an ambulance type of thing. Whereas the new me was, no, this guy's hurt too. Make sure he's all right because I'm good enough. And I would snap at everything. I'd have road rage. If you were on the highway in front of me and going slow, I was flashing my high beams at you, tailgating you, and just getting so mad. And my face would get almost as red as your shirt. And now I'm able to, and I still have my slip ups from time to time, but I'm more at ease now. I'm like, whatever, I get there when I get there. And the joy of doing that is I don't get there as stressed.
Yeah.
So I'm adding years to my life.
Right. Yeah, no, and that's I mean, stress is such a silent killer, and there's example after example in both of our lives and many others of, you know, once you eliminate that stress, suddenly your health numbers that the doctors measure all improve, right?
Yeah.
Didn't change your diet, didn't change your workout, just change your stress and your health improved.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, my wife and I were just having this conversation yesterday because a family member of hers was on vacation at another relative's home, was curious as to how high the staircase was for some reason, because it was a impressive staircase apparently. Got out a tape measure to measure it, slipped and fell and died, doing nothing other than curiosity about the height of this staircase. And
Wow.
so it reminded me and reminded her that every day has to be special because we never know when it's our last. People, oh, I'm only gonna use the china for the good occasions. I'm only gonna go, here when it's, special. I'm gonna save for that rainy day instead of enjoying it today. And that incident reminded me and her every day better be special. Use the china, go to eat the freaking ice cream, do the extra thing, right?
Yeah,
Because we're never guaranteed that next breath. We might be measuring a staircase and it'd be our last. And
absolutely.
so when people like you and I who've been at the brink come back, it is a foreign feeling to us to feel joy. It's a foreign feeling to us to feel peace and calm,
Yeah,
but it sure is a much better way to live, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, where would you take your message now? Like, I know it's changed and transformed because you share it from a different place. So, what is the essence of your message now versus what it was when you first came on my show?
I don't think it's changed a whole lot. It's still some of the biggest things are you have to have the self-awareness. You have to have the self-acceptance. I'm not 6'6" and I don't have all my hair on my head anymore. Two things that used to challenge me a lot, but it's who I am. It's how I was built. That's all there is to it. Nothing I can change about it. Um, so to have people accept themselves for who they are, meet others where they're at, and if you want to improve your life, it's up to you. You don't need permission, and you don't need other people to support you. I think it's in Trent's book, Trent Shelton's new book, is he talks about being your own superhero.
Hmm.
And that's what it's all about. Like we've got to cheer for ourselves and be proud of ourselves. One of the things I shared in Nashville was I never got to hear my father say that he was proud of me.
Mm.
And that hurt me for a long time. But the reality is, I'm proud of me. And that's more important.
How long did you carry the weight of that, not having your father, his approval?
Um, 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, and so you say your message hasn't changed much, but it has because you're telling it from that wounded, hurt person who's still carrying it to now the person who can um, see it for what it was and has adapted to it. I posted this quote, so I don't remember who the quote is to attribute it to, but it plays into what you're saying. Um, you only need one person to believe in you to succeed. It's a lot easier if that person is you.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's
Uh,
powerful.
yeah. I don't, I posted it with a picture of my son and I doing the mud run. We're side by
Nice.
side, but it tells the real story, right? We all want others to accept us and to believe in us and to see the goodness in us. And then we expect that we're going to become something, but it's a whole lot easier if that one person is us,
Yeah.
because then we really don't have to be a chameleon to validate outside affirmation. We don't have to be other things to gain that approval. We can live authentically in ourselves, approve of that, and move forward with our purpose and our passion. And I think that's the point that you've gotten to. You've started to tell that story, and you say, "Oh, it hasn't changed much," but it has. If you listen to how you told it before and how you tell it now, you know, you're
Yeah.
telling it from that inner strength and not that outer validation.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you agree or
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah? So that's why people now will come up to you instead of saying, "Man, Doug, glad you're here. Don't know how you survived that," to, "Man, Doug, thank you for sharing that. I feel like it saved my life."
Yeah,
Different response, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you want to what do you want to do most with your coaching other than impact other lives? What is your ultimate goal?
Hmm. That's a challenging one because I mean, once you start impacting lives, I mean, like,
Well, not much more. There's impacting
yeah,
lives.
and make a living out of impacting lives. I mean, there's so many different facets to it. Like one of the things is being able to do that from anywhere in the world.
Hmm.
The laptop lifestyle that everybody wants, um, or a lot of people want. But being able to coach people and see the impact, and I focus more on executives, business owners, because I've been in that position.
Hmm.
So many entrepreneurs and business owners, small business owners that end up taking their own lives
Hmm.
when business fails. And I was almost one of them. So I focus on them because I know I can have a greater impact with them. And when I impact one business owner, it impacts everybody that works for them and everybody in their
Hmm.
lives. So I I say to have a massive reach. And right now I'm gonna say 1 million people because of the power of the compounding effect. However, I imagine in a year or two it's gonna be up to 1 billion people.
Sure. Well, and it's a number that's possible because of the compounding effect.
Yeah,
The ripple effect transcends what we can see from the shore,
yeah,
and it becomes a tsunami on the other end. So I think that kind of impact is vital. But I also appreciate that you're trying to help business owners, because the small business is the engine that actually runs our country,
yeah,
at least here in America. I don't know about Canada, but if it wasn't for the small business owners, a lot of the stuff wouldn't run the way it does. And so they're the ones that struggle the most because they don't get the tax breaks, they don't get the buyouts, they don't get the, oh, you're too big to fail help out from the government, right?
yeah,
They get the bootstraps, grassroots, let's lift it up and keep it up, you know. So it does have more meaning and more impact. Um, but I think the business owners, um, if they're doing it for anything more than just a year or two, have all stepped through that psychological depression and, oh my God, what am I doing? And how am I going to do this? I don't think any of them step right into it and are like rocket to the top.
no,
They have to get through that adversity. And the fact
yeah,
that you can understand what that adversity is and can take them through, I think provides that bigger impact, don't you?
yeah, absolutely.
So, transforming their business, what does that look like to you?
One of the things I help them with is through software. I help them increase their profits, um, and it's immediate increase in profits because if you're not making a profit, you don't have a business.
Hmm.
And getting systems in place so they can standardize stuff. And eventually, the goal is to have their business set up so they can have their business run while they're on vacation.
Hmm.
And then change the environment, the culture in their business. Because a lot of times in the construction industry, we have toxic environments, and it's harsh. I witnessed it, especially recently. There's one gentleman who is it's very easy to get him going, and people will come to him and purposely do their best to get him going, just to get a rise out of him, just so they can have a laugh. And sure, at times that's okay at best, but a shit like that part of my language that
No,
it's got to stop.
yeah. You, it's hard enough because that person is probably already beating himself up for whatever internal stuff he's fighting, and then to get it externally, just a compound effect in the wrong way.
Yeah,
Um, but I think the impact that you have on business owners, you're increasing their profits on the bottom line, but you're not making them spend ton more money to do that. You're
no,
actually showing them through automation and through different systems that they can have this increased profit. Do you guys watch or get Shark Tank up there in Canada?
yeah,
Yeah, it's been one of my favorite shows for 15 years. But it always amazes me how many of these people go on there and they say, well, we did, $5 million in sales. Well, what was your profit? Oh, we were a million in the hole. Like, It happens over and over again. And I'm like, how do you make so much revenue and not have a profitable business? And people equate revenue with profit and they get it all backwards and screwed up.
Yeah,
Like, do you see that a lot in what you're coaching?
absolutely. There's a great saying: revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family.
Mm,
And so many people, and I was guilty of it too. They start out, they want to hit that $1 million mark in sales. But here's the thing: if you run $1 million business with a 2% profit margin, or if you run a $500,000 business with a 20% profit margin and a lot less stress and a lot less headaches, which one would you rather have?
hmm. Yeah. The less
It's,
headaches and stress.
yeah, unless you're feeding your ego only and then you want that big number, that big profit number, but build it solidly, have a solid foundation, and then scale up to $1 million slowly and bring your profits with you. So many people chase that top line revenue so they can say, "Oh, I got $1 million business, a $5 million business." What are your profits like?
Right. Yeah, and one of the things that I appreciate about what you said is the automation and the systems in place. And having built several businesses myself, I'm guilty of this too. We built all these nice walls and all this nice roof, to use construction terms, but we forgot like our floor.
Yeah,
We we forgot the things that are going to keep us grounded and stable while we were building those walls and how, roofs. And I again, I think it's people want to jump to that. Oh, I'm a business person. They don't want to do the things that make them a successful, sustainable business person. And I
yeah,
was guilty of that for a long time too. It's like you got to have some systems in place that are sustain growth.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
shifting the mindset to from the top line to the bottom line and getting the foundation in place.
so I do transformational life coaching, and mindset is a really huge factor and key into what I do. Do you find that it's a part of a lot of what you do with these business owners? Because you just
Yeah,
mentioned it.
yeah. There definitely is mindset involved with it because they've got to change the way of thinking. You know, they're ego driven. They don't support their team properly. Um, Toxic masculinity or toxic traits in the business. This mind shift change need to happen. A lot of people think I'm the boss, I'm the owner, I'm in charge. Well, no, you've got to have your people there. Take
Yeah,
care of your people, they'll take care of your customers.
that's interesting because I used to, when I was right out of high school, work for a company called Ferrier. They were the precursor to Unisys, which is, a major computer building company. And we would get these kits and we'd have to take the blueprints and the pieces and then put them together so that the components could get out the door. And those of us on the line, we would find better, more efficient, faster ways to wire things and to get them moving than what the blueprints and the general instructions gave. And so we would take those suggestions to management, because instead of us just being the only ones who were faster, why not make like everybody faster, right?
Yeah,
And management would invariably say, we've always done it this way, and that's the way we're going to do it. Okay. And,
yeah,
you know, a decade later, you're out of business.
yeah. I was gonna say Kodak, we always took pictures this way. Blockbuster, we always rented movies this way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're not willing to adapt and change and find, better ways, and oftentimes it's the people on the ground, the boots on the ground, the people doing the job that can tell you, the better way.
Yeah,
I worked at GCU helping people get their doctoral degree, and upper management had us do a project that we had to go through and write down every single step that we had to take in order to just process one student. And I remember the manager standing next to me when we were showing them what we had to do, and she's like, she almost dropped an F bomb. She's like, I can't believe there's so much overlap work in this process. We need to streamline that. But because they were dictating from their office and not out on the floor,
Yeah.
they didn't realize that they were dictating this whole process when half of it was redundant and not necessary, right? But that mind shift and the ego has to get out of the way.
Yeah.
Like, I coach on stepping into your passion and your purpose and overcoming your limiting beliefs. You coach to get your ego out of the way and find a more streamlined process, right?
Yeah.
Which is harder, do you think? My job or yours?
Hmm. I think it all depends on the client,
Good
on how
answer.
open they are to change.
Yeah, good answer. I think getting the ego out of the way, I think by the time they actually come and work with me, they're ready for
Yeah.
that transformation. I think when they're working for you with you, they're not quite prepared that the mindset has to be part of the process of that change. So I think your job is actually harder than mine.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't know. I think it depends on the client. I've come across some people that are ready to do it, and I'm sure you come across people that aren't ready. I had one
Yeah.
guy reach out to me. He was like, he'd call me up, he'd send me messages, he's commenting on my posts. We're friends outside of Facebook.
Mhm.
And he would be connecting with me. He's like, man, I see what you're doing. What's your coaching exactly? I want in. I need your help. I'm going through this. I'm going through that. I need your help. I need your help. Like, let's get together or let's get on a call. I'm just trying to help him out any way I can. And he's right there at the edge. And that's my biggest frustration when I can see it. The person's right there. They know they need to make a change. They want to make a change, but they don't want to pull the trigger.
Yeah. Well, what they realize is that work is a four-letter word as well.
Yeah.
They don't want to bring that element into it. It's easier to step back and say, oh, your process didn't work or whatever didn't work. I remember when a couple years ago when we were both at Nashville, one of the people up there was talking about guarantees and the line that she said has stuck with me ever since. I don't offer a guarantee because I know my program works. I can't guarantee that you'll do the work necessary
Yeah.
for the program to work, right?
Yeah.
It,
And
it
it's so true.
makes a difference. You have to be willing to do the work. Um, Other than standing on that ledge and almost taking that leap, what else triggered you to actually do the deep work necessary for your own transformation? Because in my experience, it has to, our why, although everyone says, oh, your why has to be big enough, our why, in my opinion, also has to be internal in order to be effective.
Yes. So I was going to actually get that in there. I started with external,
Yep.
right? So the ledge, what took me off the ledge was my kids. But then I had the thought of, oh, well, maybe they're better off without me because what type of leader am I for them? But then it was a flashback of my dad's passing, what that did to me, and realizing, hey, don't do this to your kids because this is even worse. So there was still external there. And then as I grew, I remember, and here's another external is I said, there's a time when I was not the greatest person. I said, what if my daughter brought home a guy that was like me? And that was a huge shift for me because now I started to look at myself.
Hmm.
And I always thought I was this, great person. I was doing great. And as I grew and I got better and better and better, there's a saying, character is doing the right thing even when nobody's watching.
Hmm.
Guess what? Somebody's always watching. We're watching ourselves.
Hmm.
So what I do when people aren't watching is I'm telling myself that's okay to an okay way to behave.
Hmm.
And that's not being in congruence with who I am. Um, so I really, as much as yes, it's about other people, but it's also about me. And we talked about me serving people and wanting to impact a million people and being a servant leader. It's actually selfish because it feels so good to me
Hmm.
to make people feel good and have that impact in their life. So it's it's a mix. I'm doing good for other people, but it's also filling my soul, filling my cup, setting my soul on fire. And that's been a big pivot for me, is accepting that it's okay for me to have that.
Yeah, it's a dichotomy of accepting the selfishness with the selflessness. Like there is as you mentioned, an overlap, right? And as long as it stays within balance and within check, then it's okay because then you're still doing servant leadership, but you're not trying to just serve yourself by this ego boost of serving others,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah, I remember an old version of me. We've both had major transformations over the year. But I remember an old version of me that used to, like, I've always been a giver and someone who does for others because that's what my dad taught me and it's what the church taught me and blah blah blah. But there was a point in my life where I would do that not because it was the right thing to do, but what could it then do for me? Did it earn me favor with God? Did it give me, a deposit in the good bank that I could withdraw from when I'm bad? And I realized that I was giving of myself, my time, my money for the very wrong reasons. It wasn't to be of service to you. It was to be of what can I gain by giving to you?
Yeah.
And when I stopped doing that, the impact that it had on others changed as well. It became more genuine, more authentic, more, you know, um, I had someone just tell me the other day, one of the reasons that they connected with me is because they felt the authentic genuineness of who I am now. And that wouldn't have happened several years ago when I was still that other person. So, um, yeah, we ride that balance, right?
Yeah.
Do you um do you have a particular um thing that you'd like to see in the transformation of those you serve? Like that one thing that really sparks that inner joy and passion?
Hmm. I think it's the self-awareness is massive for me. Developing the self-awareness is I absolutely love it. And that is a selfish thing too, because I see what that self-awareness does. It helps you just catch yourself when you're slipping.
Mhm.
And it eventually it develops so you don't need somebody to hold you accountable because you have that strength to see yourself and hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, when it's again a selfish thing, but when I see people like you and others that I've been a part of share their moment and then transform their entire world because they finally got it out. They finally stepped into their own voice.
Yeah.
And when I see that switch, I get so much joy going, I knew it was in there. Just
Yeah.
need to bring it out. Right.
Yeah. As you're saying that, I can like envision like somebody wrapped in chains and just breaking free of the chains exploding everywhere. It's
Yeah.
exactly what it is, man. It's just freeing.
Yeah. And you get to meet the person that you always knew you were meant to be,
Yeah.
just didn't know how to be in unison with it, you know? So, what's next on as we kind of, wrap up here a little bit? You and I could ramble on for hours, brothers and friends. What's next on the horizon for Doug? What's your next impact moment?
So you talked about me being a coach and a speaker. I've got an in-person speaking engagement next month. I've got another one in September, and then one coming up in November that's it's a hybrid virtual and in person.
Nice.
That was gonna be a massive one. What we didn't talk about, and I don't think I've shared it with you yet, I'm working on something big, and it's kind of written out right here. I'm writing a book.
Oh, next level.
Yes, sir. And it's it's a lot. When I started working on it, a lot of ants came up, automatic negative thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
that self-awareness, I caught myself. I was like, wait a minute, focusing on all the negative and I'm looking at all the negative things that could happen. Caught myself. I was like, oh, wait, let's reframe this. Why am I doing this? What's causing these thoughts? And I was able to do it. I was able to just basically switch it off.
Nice.
So yeah,
What,
that's what I'm working
what's your
on
working
next.
title?
Um, there's two titles right now. There's From the Ledge to the Stage
Mm-hmm.
is one. I had somebody suggest another one. I'm like, I like it, but I'm not certain it's the right one. Quitters do win
Oh,
because I quit the bullshit, quit telling myself the BS stories, and quit feeling sorry for myself, quit being a victim, even though I thought I was a victor,
yeah.
and now I'm winning.
I love that. Quitters can win.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or well, you said quitters do win, but
yeah,
I love that you're mixing that in there because that's intriguing, you know.
yeah.
Um, so how long have you given yourself to write this book?
I originally wanted to have it out last month, but I think there's a more important date coming up. That's in July. I used to celebrate my father's passing and wear like this crown, and I always celebrated his passing. Oh, this is the anniversary of his death. Oh, this is the anniversary of his funeral. This is the anniversary of this. And then after I heard that speaker in Nashville, I actually celebrated his birthday because I switched it from the negative to the positive. And I think it's possible to do the release for his birthday, what would have been his birthday, and that's a possibility. That's one of the dates I'm looking at.
Well, give yourself the deadline and then you'll force yourself to do it.
Yeah,
As long as that why is internal, you'll
yeah,
figure it out, right?
yeah. Well, and it's part of my healing journey too, right? It's writing this out. As much as I've written so far has given me so much more healing. So it's yeah, it's gonna completely free me, and then it's gonna change other people's lives.
I love it. Well, when you do send it out, we'll be sure to send it out, to share it with everyone so that you can have more people driven to it. Because if people haven't listened to your first story, it's out on YouTube at my YouTube channel. I really recommend going and listening to Doug and his first story. It's pretty incredible that he's still with us and still here and watching you transform your own life and impact others. It's a joy to be in your orbit, and I appreciate who you have become, overcoming who you were. So, thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you because you've been a part of it too. Knowing you has helped change my life,
Well, you never know what's going to happen when you just say hello to a
right?
stranger,
And
right?
like I said to you, um, the way I remember meeting you in Nashville was I felt like you were excited and energized to meet me. And when I went back this time, I went with the same purpose and the same intention. And I actually try to carry that purpose and that intention throughout my days because you never know how you're going to change somebody's life.
That's right. Uh, a simple hello and a genuine interest in who they are, and you can have impact immediately because you never know what they're going through or where their struggle is, and sometimes they just need someone to be kind for a moment, right?
Absolutely.
Well, brother, I appreciate you so much, and I look forward to your next journey. And thank you for coming back and sharing where you are and where you're headed. And we'll just keep rocking it, and we'll see each other at the top.
Sounds great, brother. I
Uh,
appreciate it.
Sounds great. Let me. Oh, I figure out where the stop record button is. All righty. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.